Hello, welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you do, please remember to give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more of my videos. That's my dog snoring in the background. And thank you very much for watching. So I did this little sketch in acrylic paint today, and hoping to show you how easy it is to get that feeling of space in a painting. I want you to get that feeling that you can walk into the space, or in this case dive in, since it's a seascape. And I hope you'll agree with me that I think I've achieved it in this painting. So I'm using acrylic paints, but this could just as easily be done with oils. I usually paint with water mixable oils. And the colours I'm using are titanium white, primary yellow, raw sienna, raw umber, French ultramarine blue, sap green and alizarin crimson. That's my usual palette, and I find I can mix most colours from there. But with acrylic paints you can buy ready mixed almost any colour you would like to see. So really you could be as adventurous as you like. Now I find a good way to do this is to start at the top of the canvas and paint to the bottom of the canvas. Another way of thinking of it is from the distance to the foreground, and the most distant thing is the sky, and at the apex it's darker blue than it is when it gets to the horizon. So I start off with the dark blue, and then I mix titanium white into it and try and make a gradation down to the horizon. And I like to put in some clouds as well. So I'm quite heavy-handed on the white in places. And for the base of the cloud, the shadow part of the cloud, I use alizarin crimson, which I mix into the blue and white. And that gives me a nice cloud base, and then I can pile on more white onto the top, and that will give me that nice fluffy cloud effect. I'm going to use this powder brush. I buy them for $1 from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to blend the paint colors in. It sort of softens that cloud and gives a much more, I suppose, realistic effect. Although I've got to say I don't go for realism, I try to do something more painterly. I'm adding raw sienna to the mix to put in a distant shoreline. You don't want too much colour in the far distance. Usually you stick to sort of greys or maybe a very pale lilac colour. A teacher of mine used to say it's as though every few hundred yards a veil is dropped and colour is leached from the scene, so that you start off with vivid colours in the foreground and they get paler and less saturated as you get into the distance. I hope that explains it. It's really important that you get the horizon line straight, especially when you're working with water, because it will make it look very strange. So I've put some masking tape on, and I've measured it to make sure that that line is dead straight along there. And I'll add paint to my ocean, and you'll see as I take the tape off that the horizon line is dead straight now, and it looks much better. All paintings go through what I think of as an adolescent phase. They're not quite one thing or the other. They are indefinite, let's say. And so I put on colors and scumble in other colors, and eventually it will all come together and make sense. But don't get too discouraged at this stage. It's sort of very tempting to say, oh, this is not going to work out, and just leave it and go on to something different. But if you keep plugging away and just keep thinking about what it is you want to have as an end result, it will come out at the end of your brush, honestly. That's how I find it works for me. I just sort of keep thinking of, in my mind's eye, that end picture that I want, and eventually I get there. I'm going to use this old bristle fan brush. I never throw a brush away, and most of my brushes are pretty old these days. And I'm going to put in some scrubby stuff on the side here. I'm thinking of it as seagrass, but it might be something different. I don't want to be too definite about it. And the other thing I do is, if I have any paint left on my brush, I generally scrub it around in the foreground. It all adds texture and it adds more color. And you end up with bits of color peeking through, and it all adds sort of depth and texture to your painting. I'm using a rigger, also known as a liner brush, and I'm putting in some finer lines. Riggers are really good for that. If you're doing any, if you're painting, for instance, a yacht or anything that needs a fine line, a rigger is a good brush. Overlapping the lines of the grass across the ocean gives added depth to the painting. It gives you a feeling of space. Now I'm using this really scrubby old bristle brush and some sap green, and I'm going to scumble on some grasses, some extra scrubby bits that add more texture. It's all about texture, isn't it? I'm going to take a little tea break and think about what I want to do next. So I put some wet paper towel over my paints to make sure that they stay in good shape for me to work. I want to draw the eye into the painting, and the way I do that is to put something in the far distance to be seen. And I've decided to put in a tiny lighthouse, which I've painted white, putting a alizarin crimson top on it, and it's just a daub. It's nothing distinct, nothing refined, just a daub of paint, really. 2 daubs of paint, one white, one red, and it represents a lighthouse, and it will draw the eye right into the painting. The nice thing about working with acrylics is that it dries quickly and you can rest your hand on the actual painting, which you can't do in oils, and it makes it easier to do tiny things like this lighthouse. As you can see, it's just a few dabs of paint, but the eye sees it as a lighthouse. And it does the trick of drawing the eye into the painting. Now I could have used my liner again, but I'm using a small round to put in some birds, just a couple of lines to represent birds. And where you place them is quite important. You don't want to have them facing as though they're going out of the painting, because then that will lead your eye in the wrong direction. So paint things going into the painting. Make your eye go into the distance of the painting. That will lend space to your painting. As you can see, there's not much to these birds, just a couple of lines and a tiny blob on the bottom for a body. And but they do look like birds if you don't look too closely. I've added raw sienna and titanium white, and I'm bringing down the colour of my sand path. Just thick sand, and you'll get there. And the grass throws a little shadow over the edge of the sand, so I'm putting in some raw sienna, straight raw sienna, to represent the shadow. And I'll probably add some raw umber too, just to darken it a little bit. I'm going to add even more interest in the form of little sailboats, and they are just a little curving line of sail, and I like to paint in odd numbers because I feel it's more interesting to the eye, so I'll put in 3 sailboats. I'm adding some lighter greens to the tops of the grass. I usually paint in sort of 3 colours, a mid-tone, a highlight and a shadow. Few more colours get into the actual painting because I spread any colour that I have on my brush onto the canvas, and not everything is glaringly obvious, but all these colours do peek through in the end of the painting. And if you move your colours around the painting, it sort of makes it cohesive somehow. When I'm painting surf, I load my brush with the white paint and just sort of scumble it along, and then it sort of takes on that surf-like wave effect. If I'm actually painting a picture of the wave, I do that quite differently. But for this kind of effect, for a distant beach effect, I just scumble on thick paint. Well, that's about it really for this beach scene. At some point you have to put your brushes down and call the painting done, and that is a very hard thing for me to do and some other artists. But you could fiddle away with this thing forever and ruin it, so you don't want it to be overworked. You just have to be firm with yourself, put your brushes down and step away from the canvas. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button to see more of my videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.